Do you have any regrets about not being more visible that weekend in 2020?
Well, I answered the question last Monday night when it was offered, and I'll be glad to answer it again. I was not working from home the entire weekend. In fact, most of the weekend, I was on the 25th floor. I was meeting with law enforcement officials.
Do I just buy into that notion that I'm going to work from home in an incident like that? Mayor Shreve would be on the scene right downtown. We let our officers stand aside by their orders. We ordered them not to do that which they are trained to do.
No one was ever ordered to stand aside. That simply did not happen.
Some of the tense moments revisiting the 2020 riots there in our live mayoral debate this past week between Mayor Hogsett and Jefferson Shreve. Right now, let's bring in our panelists to talk about this week in politics. Laura Wilson, Martin Sweet, Tony Samuel, Robin Winston with us today. And Laura, I'll start here with you. It's been more than 3 years since that weekend when we saw protests and unrest in Indianapolis. But in Mayor Hogsett's bid for re-election this year, 3 years later, that weekend continues to be a big topic of conversation in the debates and on the campaign trail.
And I thought that debate was really illuminating. First of all, congratulations to you. You did a great job moderating. It was great to see the candidates be able to address important issues. In terms of like what was really a span of a couple days or weeks out of 8 years in his administration, I can feel that, that kind of frustration from Hogsett, but I think it's a strong point for Shreve. That's a time when you really want to have visible, obvious leadership, and that was, I think, a really good point for the challenger to produce. At the same time, you had Hogsett talking about a lot of the things he's done, balanced budgets, which might not appeal to all voters, but improvements in infrastructure, in parks, right, in terms of public safety. And I think you really got to see where the candidates stand on those issues in that debate.
Martin, what did you make of the candidates and their handling of that particular question in the debates this past week as they revisited 2020?
Well, the Shreve argument, right, is really about leadership. And the problem for him, and when he starts out strong when he says, are you better off 4 years ago than you were 4 years ago or 8 years ago, that makes a lot of sense. The problem for him, though, is that cities in general, major metropolitan areas, are much worse off, right? And so it's not just necessarily this mayor, it's not just Hogsett, right? So when you make the claim about leadership, I can understand that more if other cities were doing well, but Indianapolis was not. But they're all doing on decline.
Tony, Jefferson Shreve, do you think he still has a chance to win this election? There seems to be a few issues, gun proposals among them, where local Republicans in some circles don't seem all that enthusiastic about his campaign.
Yeah, he can win. First of all, to answer your first part of your question, it'll be close, of course. It'll take, everything going right. It'll take a lower turnout for Democrat voters and a higher turnout for Republicans. But what it'll take most of all is people that have seen 8 years. And you're right, it's happening across the country in big cities. But this is the mayor's race here in Indianapolis. He's the one responsible. He didn't improve anything in the first 4 years. Crime continued to go up. In the second 4 years, crime continued to go up. You can't give the guy a third shot when he's failed twice miserably. And so, yes, that message will resonate. Also, this message on the animal shelter not getting done, that Jefferson
Shreve is really
it's creative, it's very sincere. Yeah. He's a dog lover. He means what he says, and it strikes a chord with so many of us that have pets or that don't.
Robin, what's your response to all of that and your thoughts on the mayor's handling about those questions relating to 2020?
Well, first off, I think that Jefferson Shreve has 14 million reasons why he's getting desperate now, because that's how much money he has spent, folks, of his own personal money. If I'd spent $14 million, you could have built a heck of an animal shelter with that. The bottom line is that he's being very critical of the mayor now because they are getting desperate. I do think, though, this comes to getting out the vote. And it's important that the mayor's campaign get out its base vote, articulate its message. There are a lot of issues that Jefferson Shreve has not talked about, where he was on a woman's right to choose, where he was before with the NRA, that does affect our overall quality of life and our leadership. Finally, I think the mayor has addressed this by putting more funds in the police than ever before, by trying to address mental health issues that impact things, and we have a brand new criminal justice facility that's addressing our issues.
All right, let's also talk about some news from the State House this past week. State Rep Jim Lucas, months after being arrested for OWI, has now been demoted from his post as Vice Chair of the House Veterans and Public Safety Committee. He will still serve on that committee, but no longer as the vice chair. Robin, was this the right move, or do you think they should have gone further in terms of taking away his committee assignment there altogether?
Oh, I think that they did what they wanted to do. He's not a vice chair. He's not a chair of any committee. He's got a date with destiny about a year from now with a woman named Trish Whitcomb, who's already running against him. She's the daughter of a former governor, lives in Seymour. I think it's going to be a very spirited race.
Tony, Jim Lucas, though, has been no stranger to controversy throughout his tenure at the State House.
He's been very outspoken on several controversial issues. He is remorseful, and he's being penalized for what happened. We'll see if he can make it through. My advice to him would be, if he's sincere about wanting to serve and he can show the voters that he's going to continue to do the work that they're sent to represent him, then he should move forward.
Well, let's talk about the situation in Congress as well. Finally, a new House Speaker, Laura, after weeks of delays and sometimes downright dysfunction.
Well, and this is huge. When you look at Mike Johnson, I don't know that he's already completed the first objective, but he's certainly passed the first test, which was to get elected by the Republican Party. In many ways, he looks more like Jim Jordan than necessarily Kevin McCarthy ideologically, but several people pointed out he's kind, he's nice, he seems to not be bullying or threatening intimidations, things like that Jim Jordan was doing. May not work across the aisle, but if he's able to get his party together and coalesce as we look at Ukraine, Israel, November 17th deadline, right? Got a lot of things to do. He at least is in that position.
And Martin, as Laura referenced there, obviously this all coming at such a critical time amidst the war in Israel. Congress will be looking at various aid packages, voting this past week on a resolution condemning Hamas that did pass overwhelmingly with a few votes against it, as we referenced earlier.
Right. I mean, there's overwhelming support for the state of Israel in the U.S. Congress. That's true across the Republican Party, and it's true across most of the Democratic Party. President Biden has actually been surprisingly wonderful, and the State Department has as well. There is sort of this, pro-Hamas or sort of anti-Israel, anti-Jew caucus that exists in Congress. It's not fun, it's not pleasant, but they're there and they're representing their constituents. I think in the same way that I think we could have felt compassion for the citizens of Dresden or Hiroshima or Nagasaki, we can feel compassion for the Palestinian people in Gaza, but still understand that Israel has to do what it's doing.
A lot going on in our world, no doubt, in the midst of everything happening here in domestic politics, too. Our thanks to the panel. They'll be back here in a few minutes. Up next, Indiana is one step closer to being the home of a proposed biomanufacturing hub. Up next, we'll hear from the U.S. Commerce Secretary, and we'll talk about some of the local races on the ballot this November. Up next.